Okay, so it seems like a situation has recently dropped, and I wasn't even planning on making a video today, but essentially it's to do with a VTuber called DarlingStrawb. Now, if you don't know, DarlingStrawb is a pretty popular VTuber in the space, and they cover, many different things. But essentially, they've pretty much come out with a pretty terrible kind of tweet, which has come out regarding a partnership which has been terminated. Now, essentially what they say here is, it makes me really sad to say this, but I cannot no longer support Makeshift or their campaigns. And obviously, if you don't know who Makeship are a company that make a ton of, merch. They make different plushies and things like that, which obviously they're very popular, and they work with a lot of creators. As you can see, it says like designed by creators, fueled by fans, fund limited edition campaigns. And obviously, yeah, they are a company that has been working with DarlingStrawb, for a while. They said, I've been blacklisted from any future campaigns simply for being associated, their words, with Rev. Now, if you don't know who Rev is a kind of a commentary YouTuber who obviously talks about a lot of different topics, and is also, Strawberry's partner. I don't know if they're married or if they're, I don't know what their relationship kind of actual thing is, but they're partners. They're together. And essentially, they've been kind of blacklisted from Makeship future kind of partnerships due to her involvement with Rev, which obviously is very odd. Let's see, I've worked on 4 Makeshift campaigns since 2022, even before Rev even worked with them. He has had 3 campaigns. They have profited greatly from our collaborations and gained new customers from our communities. They say it isn't personal, but how could it not feel personal? I'm quite literally one of the least edgy people ever, and yet I'm being punished for content that is not even my own. Which obviously, yeah, is true. Obviously, they do have a big connection, but at the end of the day, Strawberry's content isn't anything to do with Rev, despite, what many people might think, obviously, if you guys have seen their content, as they say, they are very, not very edgy. They're not very kind of this kind of person that you wouldn't want to work with. They are very nice. From at least what I've seen. They say, as for Rev's content, yes, it is controversial, but A, it is not my content. I do not sign off on his videos, and I don't always agree with him on everything he says or does. And B, I do not think Rev acts in a way online that are hateful or edgy to the point of deserving opportunities like this to be taken away from him from companies who have worked with us both multiple times. With very positive experiences for everyone, I think his content offers a viewpoint of many controversial topics that many people do agree with. And I think we should all let all voices be heard, which is definitely true. And obviously, they go in to defend Rev there, which obviously I think, Rev does make some good content, surrounding some different opinionated kind of things. Now, yeah, do I agree with everything Rev says? No. But, even Strawberry says, she doesn't agree with everything he says. But, there is some good content out there, which obviously, again, if Makeship wanted to part ways with him for that reason, then I think that's totally fine. But I think, then going on to Strawberry due to a connection is a little bit too far. Rev, I think, they have grounds to do it because of his content. But Strawberry, I think, yeah, just due to a connection is just way too far, and the VTubing community are not happy with that. They say Makeship has a right to do what they think is best in terms of their own PR, but we will also have the right to let our communities know what is happening. They knew exactly who they are working with over the last 3 campaigns, and they have profited accordingly. Regardless, his actions resulting in me being blacklisted purely on association, their words is wrong. Makeship has made a mistake here. Now you only must worry about your own content, but also other people's content as well. So yeah, essentially they're saying like, hey, now you got to watch out who you associate with now, let alone your own content, which I think is pretty crazy if you are planning on working with Makeship. They say, I would love to see Makeship change their mind on this, as I've loved their plushies that we've made with them, and I've bought dozens of other Makeship plushies from other creators throughout the years. The quality is great, but I cannot just in my heart support a company like this anymore. And obviously they actually dropped the message that they received saying, hi Strawb, thanks so much for reaching out. I remember introducing us from a few months back. Makeship has grown a lot since we started first working together, and as we continue to partner with a wider range of brands and creators, we've had to be more mindful of how our campaigns reflect our values. As part of that, we'll be moving away from creators whose content falls on the edgier side. Given your close association to Rev, we've decided not to move forward. So again, they didn't even say like it's because of your content that we're deciding to part ways. It's because of someone else's. That's like, obviously someone saying like, oh, for example, maybe like we didn't like Toma's content, so he's your friend, so that means you can't work with us. You know, do you see how stupid that kind of sounds? You can't work with a company because you're friends or because you're partners or because you're associated with a certain person, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, especially whenever your content doesn't reflect, you know, similar kind of things. And obviously, yeah, they keep on going as well. You know, Strawberry also says, sorry, Strawberry. So I've been calling them Strawberry, but Strawberry, same thing. Say, if you'd like to support me during all of the craziness via a sponsorship that I do have, then consider trying out Factor with my link below, which obviously they still have their sponsors with Factor, which is obviously the best move to do because, again, obviously Factor are getting a lot of sales and things. And obviously they even mention here, like, you know, Makeship's whole kind of slogan or whatever is designed by creators, fueled by fans. You think, you know, there's not going to be any fans out there that want to see more Strawberry stuff. You know, there's tons of fans out there. And, you know, they said they've had many successful drops. They've worked with them 3 times. And all of a sudden they don't want to associate with them purely because of the content the Rev is putting out. Not because it wasn't selling well. They sell well. They're literally, you know, they're saying it's fueled by fans, but they're not really fueling it by fans. They're fueling it by the people that they, you know, want to work with, and then by the fans, which I think, obviously, yeah, people have not really liked. And again, they say it's been a very tough 24 hours since I found out. I've been really anxious and stressed, but I'm just grateful to have the support that I do. Thank you guys. And then obviously as well, finally, we have the most hated kind of vice writer out there talking about this, which I think is honestly just disgusting. They say, this Strawb is so stupid and annoying. Low-key tired of seeing it on my screen. I think this will be my first block on here. Gulp. And then Anna Valens comes in and says, I don't blame you. I honestly have ignored her and her partner for months because I think that any commentary on them is feeding the beast. They said, it just kills me how people can act like they're for while perpetrating the most harmful ideologies is insane, which I think is just so dumb. I mean, you know, it's got nothing to do with this situation at all. And obviously, Anna goes on to say here, honestly, I'm not sure why Strawb publicly litigated this. She certainly isn't going to work with that company ever now again. Plus, it sends the message to other companies, her sponsors, that she'll cook you on her social media if you drop her. Also, her community is overreacting, and people pay attention to that stuff. No one wants to be associated with that kind of toxicity, which is the dumbest take ever. This is why, you know, this is why Anna Valens is one of the dumbest kind of authors out there whenever it comes to Vice, dumbest kind of content creators, if you could even call them that, whenever it comes to VTubers and the whole entire community, because they say stuff like, you know, I don't know why they decided to call them out publicly. It's very, very obvious. It's because she's faced, you know, a pretty terrible situation of being kicked out due to association, which should definitely be called out in a company. It's not like, you know, companies aren't stupid. They're not going to be like, oh, okay, now they're going to want to kick out every other, you know, they're going to want to call out every other company that doesn't want to work with them. No, they're not that stupid. They understand that this company, Makeship, are the ones being unreasonable. It's not, you know, Strawberry who is being unreasonable. It is Makeship that is doing the unreasonable stuff, and it's very, very obvious by a lot of the messages, by literally everything that's come out. And I think anybody with a brain can notice that. And obviously this person follows up by saying, exactly, I don't know who this person is. They say, I think a golden rule is one should never criticize / attack a sponsor who drops them unless the company is clearly toxic. I mean, did you just see that? Like, literally, they are very clearly toxic there. They are literally getting rid of her due to association, not due to any acts of her own, due to association, you know, saying severely exploiting you or others, and even then you have to set the tone with an immense level of maturity and care. Once you're known as the VTuber who psyched their community on a company, true or not. You cannot undo the black mark, which I think that's just so dumb. That's such a horrible take to have on that. I mean, again, this is exactly why they stick to Twitter and Vice articles, and they never, you know, pipe up on a place like YouTube. I mean, again, I mean, they're one of the stupidest, I'd say, creators in the space that I've ever seen. And honestly, I think anybody attacking Strawberry on this kind of situation is dumb. I mean, that's literally all I can say. You are dumb if you're attacking her on this. I mean, it is clear who is in the fault here. It's Makeship who are in the fault, who have been getting rid of people due to association. And hey, maybe this isn't the only person that has been dropped due to this, and maybe other people aren't actually coming out about the situation. Maybe they've done this before in an earlier kind of situation, but obviously due to nobody speaking up, we didn't know about it. And I think, you know, obviously this kind of behavior needs to be called out to, you know, by these companies. Obviously, yes, maybe you do risk working with some companies in the future, sure, whatever. But I think, you know, it does need to be called out, and people need to understand that, you know, sometimes companies mess up, and sometimes companies, you know, make some really bad decisions and it needs to be called out. You know, I would do exactly the same as Strawberry is doing right here. You know, I would be calling out this company. I would be talking about it publicly because obviously this is a outrageous kind of thing to be happening. You know, a long partnership which is, you know, benefited both of you, and all of a sudden they decide to cut it due to association. That's just completely stupid. That is completely wrong. And obviously, you know, whenever I first saw this tweet, I was kind of shocked by what I had actually seen. And obviously there's been so much support in the VTuber community by a lot of people, and also just people outside the VTuber community as well. Obviously like Kiosha saying YouTube has better quality plushies and stuff. Rima putting like a hug emo. You know, Alara saying, I'm sorry, Strawb. So again, Rev as well, even saying this too, saying guilt by association is an incredibly cringe and pathetic thing to do. Luckily, we have other companies who actually have our backs, which, yeah, hopefully those companies do ramp up some more sponsorships. And I hope that they do find another kind of creator for plushies and things. Obviously, as Kiosha said there, YouTubers apparently do some good ones. So hopefully they don't have the same, you know, mindset as Makeship of like, oh, you know Rev, or you're partners with Rev, or, you know, Rev's your husband or whatever. Okay, we're not going to work with you. That's just so dumb. I think that is one of the stupidest things ever, and I think anybody that is trying to defend Makeship in this situation is just stupid. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, if you want to say, you know, Rev deserves to be dropped or whatever, sure, I can understand that. Obviously, he is the one making the controversial content. I think even he understands that he makes controversial content. But the fact that other people around him are being affected by this is absolutely outrageous. And I'm glad that, you know, obviously they spoke up about this and didn't stay silent like some people were suggesting them to do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this video. Obviously, I wanted to keep you guys up to date as quickly as possible. As I said, I wasn't really planning on making this video. Like, I was planning on releasing it tomorrow, but there's been so many different inputs and things coming out from, you know, people that I thought I'd just do it tonight because I want to get this to you as quickly as possible. And yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also go to GameSubs, use my code Kaza, get 10% off. Again, we got a ton of really cool stuff over there. I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.